מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו. קם כי אלק וקיצל מוות, לא ידע רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד שורדיי. דשענת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The words of the 23rd Psalm, the Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So we are gathered here this afternoon, sadly to say goodbye to Rini Goldberg, of blessed memory, Rachel Bat Moshe ve'Esther Malka, Zichrona Libracha. The daughter of Marcus and Esther, the wife of the late Max Goldberg, of blessed memory, the sister of Rita Masters, Terry Sawyer, blessed memory, and sister-in-law of Jerry Sawyer, the mother of Frank and Mercedes Goldberg, Marilyn and Norman Goldberg, Lori and Leslie Goldberg, the grandmother of Jason, Carly, Aviva, Daniel, Amy, Rachel, Michaela, Matthew, Jennifer, Maxa, Amanda, and Adam. The great-grandmother of Lisa, Sam, Isaac, Ben, Teddy, Julia, Harvey, Violet, Miles, Chloe, and Sadie. Rini passed away on September 19th, surrounded by family, at the age of 94. And it's interesting that Rini left this physical world while the Jewish world was celebrating Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of a new Jewish year. According to the rabbis, is the day when God decides who shall live and who shall die. On the surface, it seems like Rini did not get another year during this divine trial. But according to Jewish tradition, a person who dies on Rosh Hashanah is a tzaddik, a person of great righteousness. This is because those who die on Rosh Hashanah are the ones God has rewarded with a whole year on the previous high holidays. But not only that, Rini passed away also during a Shabbat. The rabbis also teach that if one dies on any Shabbat, they are considered a tzaddik. More so, even more so, when it is Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah. A woman of many virtues, her daughter Marilyn noticed that Rini was born within a day from a very powerful woman, Queen Elizabeth, and died within a day from another powerful woman, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of blessed memory. Rini Goldberg, blessed memory, was the living example of the Eshet Chayil. According to Jewish tradition, every Friday night we sing Eshet Chayil on the Shabbat table before the dinner. Eshet Chayil translates as a woman of valor and consists of the concluding section of the book of Proverbs. It's the perfect eulogy to a woman that represents virtues of courage and strength. And as we will hear in a few minutes by Rini's children, those two powerful words, courage and strength, can describe perfectly Rini's life. The text, the Eshet Chayil text, goes like this. Eshet Chayil mi'imtza, who can find a virtuous woman? For her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts in her, so that he will have no lack of gain. He will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She stretches out her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches forth her hand to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she will rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the teaching of kindness. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband praises her and says, "Many women have done superbly, but you excel them all." Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman should be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and whatever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. It's beautiful words from the Bible to praise the matriarch of the Goldberg family. A woman who meant and did so much for so many. So I would like now to invite one by one Rinnie's children to come forward to present their eulogies so we can all honor the memory of Rinnie Goldberg. So I would like to start by inviting Frank Goldberg to come forward to eulogize his mother.
Thank you, Rabbi. We're very blessed. We're very blessed to have our dear mother, my mummy, for 94 years. Very blessed. My mummy didn't even go to high school because World War II in England stopped that. But she taught herself a lot of life skills that we all knew about. She was married at 17, and while she was still a teenager at 19, she packed up her baby, a suitcase, 5 pounds, and she left. She left her parents, and she was going to join her husband far away across an ocean. No phone, no cell phone, no credit card. No, just a wrinkled piece of paper with an address scribbled on it of some address in a faraway land in a foreign country that she had just seen on a map. She didn't know much about Canada. She knew that they spoke some form of English. She knew that there were a few Jews there, so I guess to her it sounded pretty good. And she set off to join the only person she knew in that country, which was my 19-year-old father at that time, Max Oliver. Imagine the courage. But that was Rinnie's chutzpah. Imagine the unwavering commitment, the long journey alone into the unknown. But she wanted to create a family in a new land. And she did. As you heard, 4 children, 12 grandchildren, 11 great-grandchildren. She made a family. So when the rabbi asked me, what event, what trait symbolizes your mother, I immediately thought of an event about 15 years ago when she had me escorted to a funeral of her friends. And at the service, the children of the departed had orchestrated a very complex theatrical performance, and it culminated with arms and legs flying in the air and voices going, "We love you, Mummy, we love you, Mummy." And everyone was pleasantly impressed except my mother. This was her friend. And my mother grabbed my hand and said, "Don't sing." Don't sing her dance at my funeral. I knew that woman. She was always crying about how her children were disrespectful and ingrates to her, how they treated her like dirt. And then my mother said, and now they're making her a Broadway show? Come on. Love isn't what you say. What isn't what you dance about. Love is what you do. Every day. every day. Okay. Love is what you do every day. And boy, oh boy, did she ever walk that talk. You know, my mother, every single day, was there for 94 years. No task was too difficult, no hurdle was too daunting, no time for her to get tired, no time for her to take her foot off the gold. Giving her was never an option, not for my money. Sure, she was set in her ways. She could show you a real sharp tongue. She could give you a glance that could stop a raging bull in its tracks. Nobody messed with my mummy. But she gave 110% of everything, all the time. She had no patience for anyone who wasn't giving more than 100% of what she thought they should be giving. On her watch, she ensured that every one of her children, every one of her grandchildren, had a Jewish home, 3 square meals, a shoulder to cry on. No matter, she did not have the time or energy or resources. She didn't have a companion for 35 plus years. She did it somehow. She got it done every time, every day. Failure was not an option for my mother. She never even considered it. She cheered us on, she critiqued us, she tried to referee us. And no matter what mistake she made, she forgave us. Because except for the times when she would unilaterally impose some sort of condition, my mother's love was unconditional most of the time. We were raised in Zetta. We were the reason she was living. Her family was everything. She wasn't perfect. Once in a while she made mistakes. And she certainly had her own shtick. But that was because she was very, very human. And that didn't stop her from knowing what she had to do. She just got up every day and she did it for 94 years. So, Mom, "94 years well spent. And I'll never stop loving you, my dear Mom. Never."
Thank you, Frank. Next, I would like to invite Marilyn to come forward to eulogize her mother.
Well, I had the honor of reading some things that some of the grandchildren wrote. And although I used to write things for a living, I couldn't have done anything as good as what they did. So I'm going to use their words. The first message is from Carly, Frank's daughter, Frank and Mercer's daughter. Our Bubby was an amazing woman who cared for her family deeply. We all have great memories of her caring for us and cooking amazing food. No one can do lavish like Bub. Her baked chocolate chip cookies were an ongoing favorite, not to mention her chicken noodle soup that I can only one day hope to replicate. But she had the secret sauce, despite being brought up as a big city girl in London, England, only to find herself as a war bride with child in some faraway place called Winnipeg. But she made a life for herself and persevered, and I will use that as an inspiration in mine. Thank you, Bubby, for all those great Friday night dinners, amazing family stories, and for loving all of us, including my husband, Junior, and our daughters Sadie and Chloe. We will all miss visiting you at the Shaftesbury and hearing your thoughts and opinions and seeing the smile on your face when we came to visit. You are one of the great bubs of years past, and we cherish the memories we have of you. Take care and be at peace. Love, Carly, Junior, Sadie, and Chloe. The next message is from my daughter, Aviva Goldberg. Bobby Rini was born the day after Queen Elizabeth, but I think she had more in common with the famous woman who died the day before her, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They were both small Jewish women whose size belied their importance. They both died on Rosh Hashanah, holding out until they couldn't be here any longer. They both left behind a large, loving, and hard-working family, and they both loved to judge. Aviva wrote this. My Bubby never went to college, let alone law school, but she raised 4 children who went on to higher education. Instead of Brooklyn, Bubby was born in London and lived through the Blitz, meeting my Zadie, who was stationed there with the Canadian military, and coming to Canada as a war bride. She didn't need to be brave in a classroom or a courtroom. But my Bobby did the bravest thing I know when she survived those bombs, crossed the ocean, and got on a train from Halifax to Winnipeg, choosing to believe that her Max would be waiting for her on that train platform at the other end. Unlike RBG, she didn't believe, I don't think, in women having their own careers, at least at first. But then she saw her daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters work hard and succeed, and I think she changed. She once told me that she hoped I would marry a nice Jewish doctor, but then realized I had become the nice Jewish doctor all by myself. She kept a copy of the book that I edited in her bedroom and also walked me through making my first pot of chicken soup. When I saw her for the last time last week, she told me that I worked too hard, but that I looked happy. I think she meant that as a compliment. RBG will be remembered for her legal wisdom and her legacy for women's rights. Bobby Rini will be remembered for her amazing cooking, her crocheted blankets, her fierce sense of humor, and her even more fierce expressions of love. She will never be as famous as the notorious RBG, but to us she will always be Bobby Rini Goldberg, the notorious BRG. May both their memories be for a blessing. This is from Amanda, Terry and Jerry's daughter. Because of COVID, I won't be in Winnipeg for it, but I wanted to send you a few quick words to remind you that you grew up with my Bobby too. This was sent to Rabbi Mass. To forward to us. She lived on Maiders Bay West next door to my family, but she made the biggest contribution to our grade at Ramah and JWC. She was a great Bobby to a lot of people. If you came to any of my birthday parties, you would have tasted her Rice Krispie square cake and other baked goods she made for us. She contributed to Shabbat treats. She drove carpool for our school field trips, was a regular at Nosh Hooray, buying us and our friends lunch and treats. And by friends, I mean Paula. She was a very special Bobby and made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives. She was giving and generous, making Paula blankets for when she was in hospital, and also had a sharp and hilarious tongue. Now, Maxa, Amanda's sister, and also Terry and Jerry's daughter, of course, she wrote something that's very beautiful, but she didn't want the whole thing read at the funeral because it's quite long. But if anyone wants it, I invite them to contact me and I'll send them a copy. So I'm just reading a few paragraphs. It is with profound sadness that I write this to say goodbye to my Bobby. My Bobby, who I had the pleasure and sadness of calling my parent. The woman who picked me up from school, drove me to piano and swimming lessons, and took me out for lunch at a moment's notice. She was who I called when I did not feel well and needed to be picked up from school. She was there when I was hungry, lonely, and she was there when I needed a good joke. When I asked her about coming to Canada on a boat, she would say, "When I left London, Frank had 2 shoes. When I arrived in Canada, he had none." Sometimes she would tell me stories of her and Zadie and their robust social life. While getting into bed after a long day, she would recall how they would often be interrupted by a knock on the door. Friends would come by and ask that they come out to play. She would be tired and want to go to bed. Zadie, of course, would chide her and say, "We can sleep tomorrow. Let's go." To this day, I cannot fathom how Bobby managed to make a weekly Shabbat dinner for her 4 children and their spouses, 12 grandchildren, and later some of their spouses, and still have enough leftovers to send everyone home with food. From the throne of her kitchen, Bobby raised some of the most empowered women I know. Women who are not afraid to speak their minds. Women who have changed the landscape of their respective fields. Her granddaughters, Bobby took in her daughter-in-laws as if they were her own children. Her granddaughters became doctors, teachers, PhDs, a dentist, an actuary, and an accountant. Bobby had a very special relationship with my siblings and me. In her words, when my mom died, we lost the most important piece of our puzzle. She was determined to fill that hole as much as she could. When she could no longer make me dinner or lunch, we began going out to restaurants. I liked to go places where we would have some privacy. Bobby liked to go places where everyone could see us. She loved to call people over, hold their hand, and remind them of how she knew them as a child. She loved eating at campus, sitting in the most visible spot. I was embarrassed. She felt like the queen of the Winnipeg Jewish community. I grew older, she grew older. The phone calls became less frequent as I became busier. When I came home to Winnipeg, I would spend hours in Bobby's apartment. Sometimes I would let her take me down to the lobby so she could show me off to her friends. When it was time for me to go back to Toronto, she always made sure to start a fight so I would stay a little longer and mask the pain of living far away. I will miss our trips to the Shaftesbury with screaming kids on our arms. Our roles were now reversed. While she once made sure I was fed, we brought her a hot soup from Bernstein's in the hopes that Bobby would eat and put a little schmaltz on her tuchus. While she once worried about me crossing the street, I worried that she was getting frailer and frailer. I wished that I lived in Winnipeg, just so that I could have the opportunity to return the love she gave me for so many years. And now this next writing is from my daughter Amy. Norman and I, our daughter Amy. This is everyone will recognize this is Amy. "Everyone with a big nose, get in the car. No one's grandmother spoke that way except for mine. And Bobby didn't care who heard her in the carpool line at the Hebrew school because, in her words, we all had big noses. And by that logic, I guess we all belonged in her warm car. When I tell people how I grew up, I don't always believe it. The truth is, as I saw it, there was a castle across the street from my house, and a king and queen lived there. And I was their subject and somehow also their favorite person, or so Bobby Rennie and Zadie Max led me to believe. In that house, the castle on Mather's Bay, I spent my afternoons snacking on cookies and wrestling with my cousins, till we were told to keep it down and clean up our mess. As we feasted at the Queen's Court, nibbling from the treat drawer when we were way past full every Friday night. I can't tell you what Bobby smelled like, except that there was a combination of Clinique, aromatic elixir, cigarette smoke, stale flour, and fresh eggs that can't be bottled and that I will not ever know again. I can't say the last time she had the strength to hold me close, but when she did, that fragrance lingered, years after, away from her kitchen, well past when she quit smoking. I was right back up next to her, snuggled into her cozy body as she knit with the news on. I don't have words for what she cooked like, for the food she prepared, as delicious as it was. It's been years since Bobby graced her own kitchen. She shared with me a few times that in her years in assisted living, she dreamt of her kitchen. When Bobby slept at night, she longed for the place where she was truly at her best, Not always at ease, but in the midst of creating her opus, an artist at work. Her food was to soothe us with sweets, to comfort us with curated recipes for each holiday meal, for each season's tradition. She reminded me once when I called for a recipe not to make a fuss of it. She insisted the food should taste like it tastes. She warned with her voice shaking, close to yelling, to watch it carefully or it's a waste. She was years ahead of Jamie Oliver or Gordon Ramsay. She was right as usual in this regard. Some things are just perfect in their simplicity. Bobby knew what I wanted, what I needed, even before I knew it myself. For me, I remember on my 9th birthday, I had forgotten my lunch again. My birthday is the first weeks of school. I should have, by grade 4, figured out how to grab my lunch bag every day, but I was likely too concerned with creating my own ponytail. I didn't get myself together again in the bustle of the morning. When I called from the office to my Bubby, I thought I was in big trouble. She arrived with a lunch, too big for me to finish in one meal, with all my favorite things. She gave me a hug and said, "I knew you'd forget your lunch today, don't worry." In the bag, between the tuna sandwich and the forbidden pack of gum, was even ketchup chips, a snack that truly disgusted her. All the same, Bubby was certain to stuff into every lunch of mine, no matter how many times she packed it. In the last 20 years, living away from the castle, from our queen, I was always drawn toward her. I couldn't visit the city without seeing her, without offering fealty at her feet. We shared a bowl of fruit or a fresh cookie, and Bubby made me laugh. She had her dramas, and in her head was a complicated file of every person in Winnipeg and their business and their family and their extended family and their neighbors' children and their neighbors' children's business. But for me, the sweetest moments were those on the phone when I would call while I walked the dog. In our check-ins, Bubby wanted to know what I was doing specifically. She wasn't interested in how I was feeling emotionally or who I'd spoken to that day. Instead, Bubby insisted on the details, where I was going and what I was cooking for dinner, and what I had picked up from the store, like she was checking in all of the nooks of my crannies of my life. She wanted to be sure I didn't leave anything amiss. Like a bloodhound, she could get right to the source of my stress, sniffing out the clues. Maybe what I will miss most, though, about Bubby is the sense of abundance that overwhelmed me. There wasn't a meal served that wasn't a feast. There wasn't a blanket made that wasn't the warmest. There wasn't a game of mahjong that Bubby didn't gather a pile of quarters before her at each hand. There wasn't a hug that wasn't a snuggle. There wasn't a scolding that didn't make me feel like I was both a disappointment and somehow completely shielded from whatever came next. Bubby would plot and plan and solve the problem before I could. She would crack it open before she let me hang up the phone. No fuss, no excuses. Bubby wanted me to be bathed in the warmth of her, the wealth of her caring, the wrath of concern, and she copious, endless passion of her truest, deepest love. The love that she had for me, for her grandchildren, was both a cloak and a burden. I will miss my Bubby dearly. I am really just so proud of her journey, her struggles, her boldness, her style, her spunk, her attitude. I am really just so grateful to have had her, to have been in the circle of her family, of this wonderful group of people who shared her life today. A few months ago, when Bubby was near the end, she threatened literally to haunt me. Of all the people in the world, she promised to creep about me in her afterlife for the rest of my life, clawing into my ears and lurking in the shadows. I hope she does. I hope my Bubby Weenie is everywhere I go forever. And I hope that now, for once, she is at peace, no longer missing her beloved husband, my Zadie, and her daughter, my auntie. I hope that she haunts me forever in all I do, so I too can maybe bring the abundance of love to the world that she did. I hope my Bubby Weenie is always about me, reminding me always to leave with the people I love the unfailing knowledge of the most fierce, most righteous love there ever was. So that's the end of it. I told you they could write better than anything I could write. And
Thank you, Marilyn. Laura, if you want to come to the microphone to offer your eulogy to your mother.
few months ago, when my mother came home from the hospital and ended up being confined to her bed, she said to me that she doesn't want to die, but is afraid she is going to. I never ever heard words of succession ever come out of her mouth. She was a fighter. And the only time she ever fought for herself was to be there for everyone else, and she truly was. It is in keeping with the fact that she died on Rosh Hashanah as a righteous person, a tzaddik. Aside from the disposition of a gentle giant, both mentally and physically, she was the most selfless person I have ever known. And to me, she was the perfect mother. There wasn't a thing I would have changed. I don't know where her strength came from, but she endured more than most, and her ability to keep going on no matter what not only defied all odds, but perhaps defined her motherhood. Her physical ailments were many and quite serious for some 20 plus years, yet you would barely ever hear her complain about how she felt physically. You had to draw it out of her. When you spoke with her, she wouldn't complain about her ailments, but made sure you were okay and being a good person. And to her, being a good person was not so much about being nice. It was about being good. Good to everybody, with deeds more than words, such as when she drove cancer patients to their appointments for those that did not have transportation, while my father himself was going through cancer treatment. It was about being available, as she always was, to anyone who wanted her guidance or just an ear. While some needed her more than others, it didn't matter. Whoever wanted my mum, whoever wanted Bubby Rini, got Bubby Rini. Almost every conversation anyone would have with her centered on the person she was conversing with. She wanted to ensure they were okay, and equally, she wanted to ensure they were always doing the right thing. And she told you her opinion, asked or not, to anyone, immediate family, friends, acquaintances, and even strangers. But there was a special magic about her, and magic is the right word, and that she had a special quality that drew people to her. As a teenager, my friends would come into my house, uninvited, literally wave to me or say hello to me briefly, and then go directly to the kitchen and yenta with my mum, oftentimes for hours. And boy, did my mum like to yenta. They would wave to me on the way out at least. They would walk out with a dose of advice or confidence or something to reflect on, or just a good feeling, especially after being fed her infamous food and baking. God forbid you would leave and not gain 5 pounds. It was as close you could get to a sin in her books. Growing up as a young child, I vividly remember her coming to my room every night for years and asking me about my day and helping me to work through any issues, whether I wanted to talk about them or not. Not realizing it at the time, she instilled a sense of confidence, sensibility, and judgment in me. And for years, I think about how those talks helped me make great choices in all aspects of my life, including choosing Leslie. She told me many times that the day I brought her home, she knew she was the one. I think she meant for me, and boy, did she love and cherish Leslie, as did Leslie her. And while she had an opinion on everything, no matter who her children or grandchildren brought home, she welcomed them and treated them like her immediate children, always giving my sibling's spouse and my spouse, Leslie, the benefit of the doubt, no matter what. Over the years, whenever I would see my mom, she would ask, "Have you been good to Leslie?" And if she could sense I wasn't the best I could be at the moment, she would look at me in a way that caused one to self-reflect. She didn't really have to judge. She let you be the judge of yourself. That's why sometimes you didn't like what she had to say, but you knew deep down it was often square on. And when she welcomed a new family member, she welcomed their entire family. Not just the Machatonim, but all the siblings and relatives and their friends. Everybody enjoyed, liked, and loved Irini. I think because she enjoyed, liked, and loved everyone. Over the last few days, I received calls, emails, and texts from many friends from childhood and beyond, and people who met my mom even briefly. Very few just gave condolences because they all had to share a story of how my mom made them feel or a specific memory of the great character of my mom, often decades after they had interacted with her. Beyond her wisdom, she was so mentally tough. She endured a lot. The passing of my father when he was only 60, with who she had a great love affair. I witnessed their joy and appreciation of each other growing up and how much fun they would have together. She also endured the passing of my dear sister Terry at such a young age and kept going to be there for her Jerry, Jennifer, Maxa, Amanda, and Adam. I admire her strength because she, unlike some, including me, could look past their own sorrow and despair and help fill the gap left by such an amazing person in my sister. As my mom grew older, it became increasingly difficult for her to join us in what became a family ritual where she would come for dinner Friday or Sunday nights, and oftentimes with my in-laws Sam and Boomy of blessed memory. We miss those times, in fact. In fact, we'll miss everything about my mom. Everything. My mom was a modern-day woman, as modern as any woman I can think of in today's day and age. She was born in the 1920s and grew up in a period when women stood behind their man. My mom never did. My mom was my father's true partner, and sometimes she did stand behind him, and sometimes she stood in front of him, and sometimes she stood beside him. She was independent-minded and had great conviction, strength and character, and above all, confidence. While everyone knew she loved to cook and bake and take care of her kids and everyone around her, her worth was not defined by the paycheck she brought home. Her worth was defined by the many lives she blessed, a priceless gift. My mom was born the day before the Queen of England, also her place of birth. And my mom passed on Rosh Hashanah, just as Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Unlike those two powerful women, my mom never had the public persona or the notoriety of those women, the way one would normally think of it. But to my dad, to me, to her children and her spouses, to her grandchildren, to her great-grandchildren, and her many friends, and to everyone she touched, she was an amazing person. And while she was never trying to get others to look up to her, so many did and will forever. Mom, I love you. We all love you.
Thank you, Lori. Again, thank you, Frank, Marilyn, and Lori, for sharing your eulogies with us today. And just a quick reminder that the word eulogy means a good word. And as you just heard, Rinnie's eulogies were the perfect way to honor her life. The eulogy is the tool to remind us that not everything gets buried. In fact, as we just heard, the most important part of our existence, our values, our contributions to society, to friends, to family, stay with us. With that in mind, I would like to continue now with the memorial prayer, the El Maleh Rahamim. El Maleh Rahamim Shochem Bameroimim Hametze Menucha Nechona Tachat Konfei Hashechina V'mahalot Kedoshim Kedoshim Uteorim Kezoyer Araki Amazirim Edni Shemat Edni Shemat Rachel Bat Moshe Vester Malka She'alecha Le'olama Babur Shanu Mitpalelim Ve'ad Azkarat Nishemata Began Eden לכם ולרחמים. יעשתי ראיה וסדר כנב לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים. החיים את נשמתה. אדוני ונחלתה. ותנוח ושלום על משכבה ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Rini Goldberg, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. We are going to continue now with the recitation of the words of comfort, the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Just bear in mind that is one extra word that we add to the Kaddish because we are between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and that is when we say Le'ela min kol birchata veshirata. During this time of the year, we say Le'ela ule'ela mikol birchata veshirata. Please let's say it together. Itgadal ve'itgadash me'rava ve'alma divrach hirutei ve'yamlich malchutei בחיי חון וביום חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה, לעילה, מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, תמידם מעלמה ואמרו אמן. יש למה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. המקום ינחם אתכם בתוך שער אבלי ציון בירושלים. May God bless you and comfort you as God blesses and comforts all who mourn. And let us all say, Amen. So at this point of the ritual, I would like to thank once again everybody who is tuning in today. I'm going to stop the stream so we can continue with a private burial, but we appreciate that you connected and you accompanied the family through the internet. So I would like to invite in a few minutes the family first, then everybody else who would like to participate. And remember, the act of putting some earth on top of the coffin, according to the rabbis, is an act of chesed, an act of kindness. Thank you all for coming.